So let's say you want to retire at age 50. Well, let's see what that turns out to be. If you invest 15% from 25 to 50, you would still have $1.6 million.
Interesting.
If you go down 11%, you'd have 1.3. Go down to 10%, and it would come down to 1.16 million.
Why? Why 1.6? What does that matter? It just paints this like oversimplified picture, like you just said.
I am okay with content like this, and here's why.
Where I'm going to push back and disagree with you is
Daniel Rondberg, man. Welcome back to the BetterWealth Show.
Thanks for having me, man. Glad you're here.
This is the BetterWealth Show at your studio.
Yeah.
You know, so thank you for letting
room.
us use the studio. I had an amazing conversation with Tom Hegna. Thank you for allowing us to use the space.
It's not every day that Tom Hegna shows up at your door and personally delivers 2 copies of Paychecks and Playchecks, so that was cool for me, selfishly.
I asked him some questions that were like, hey, if you only had to choose between life insurance or annuity, what would that be? And I tried to bait him on, if I brought someone to the table that was anti-annuity, would you debate them? I need a lot of people to go to the comments and let him know, like, we would love to see Tom, because I would just have to show him, like, give the people what they want.
Yeah.
I think he's a yes, but yeah.
I think that's everybody's dream, is to see like a Ramsey and a Tom Hegna come together. And
Dude, it will
so many
happen.
people, yeah.
I'm like, well, this is the first thing I'll say. I've never shared this online, but I've reached out to Dave Ramsey's team. I want to have a conversation with George Kamel, the head person of PR at Ramsey Solutions. Very politely turned me down. They said, hey, for right now, it's a no. We wish you the best. I was so grateful that they even acknowledged me.
Yeah.
But
that's
mark
big.
my words, we will grow our show and our platform to a place where Dave and his team comes on and we have great discussions. And so that's my goal.
You guys are emerging in my mind as the channel that's hosting great conversations.
So that's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, we got 7 pieces to react to. I think the team put this together. I've not seen them. You've not seen them. Let's roll.
Let's go with them.
Video number 1 is Money Guide Show advice for retiring early.
If you have a desire for early retirement, Roth dollars are probably the most powerful dollars in your bucket because they grow tax-free forever. So ideally, you put your money in your Roth now and you let it grow, and then that's the last money that you pull out. So you think, okay, I want to retire early. I want to leave the workforce before 65. Maybe I want to leave at 55 or maybe even 50. You better understand how you're going to pay for your living expenses at that time, because we know 401ks, I can't get to that money if I leave before 55 till 59 and a half. IRAs, can't get to it till 59 and a half. So you need to understand how you're going to bridge that gap. Well, one of the best ways to bridge that gap is an after-tax account. So having that after-tax bucket, what it's really going to provide is flexibility later in life. And that's all we're trying to do.
I like that he addressed that you're not going to be able to touch those dollars for 59 and a half. So he did actually say that. That was the first thing I thought. But the second thing I thought was not that Roth IRA is the most important dollar for retirement. It's the guaranteed lifetime income dollar is the most important dollar for retirement, because where FIRE scares the heck out of me is, yes, it works for a long time, but I have the benefit of working with people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, Caleb.
Yep.
And I can guarantee you they're not interested in looking at their business and real estate portfolios when they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s. They need their dollars to take care of them. So I think the back end is what scares me for FIRE. Like, what are they actually doing to make sure they're mitigating the key risks in retirement?
How early can you use an annuity and start turning on the income?
I mean, you could do a 72T and get an annuity income, but the payouts are going to be super low. It's not about the early years of the annuity. It's about the later years. You know,
Okay.
So if the FIRE, I think what would be cool about FIRE is if they took FIRE and put Hegna's process behind it,
Yeah.
be amazing.
Talk to me about if someone wanted to retire at 40. How would you go about
Well,
that?
to me, it's like, what does retirement really mean? Like, what are you doing at 40 that you need to retire? Is it that you want to just go
That's
see,
one of my
like,
biggest problems with the FIRE movement.
Right.
Is their whole idea is this?
what do you do?
Yeah,
what does
do you-
life become?
It's
You
travel. It's doing all this stuff.
I
But
know,
you,
but
I know. I'm with you. I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I think for you and me, from a business standpoint, we'd go like, I would lose my mind.
Yeah, it'd be a miserable existence.
But let's just assume, like, let's say someone wants to do ministry.
Okay.
And they don't want to ever have to think about money again.
Yeah.
And let's say they get, they want to retire at 40. Some of the financial products that you use, annuities and other things, you technically can't really use that to start taking income at 40.
No, but again, it's what you just said, right? It's not like retirement's the end of something; it's the beginning of something else. They want to go into ministry full time and not worry about money. What he mentioned there is actually a great idea. We use bridge strategies all the time. Or people call it a volatility buffer, or they call it whatever bucket is that you set aside that's an after-tax bucket or a tax-free bucket like life insurance, where you can go to first in the early years to let those incomes defer is a phenomenal strategy, because the value of those dollars you're spending today won't be worth what that guaranteed lifetime income is for the rest of your life. And so it makes sense to burn those. So basically you just build a bridge. You would say, okay, if I want to retire at 40, what's the income that I need to facilitate from withdrawals until age 65? And then when can I turn on my guaranteed source of lifetime income to kick in and replace that?
If your whole goal is not to have to work to earn income, you're taking a potentially big tool from your toolbox away. So like if you're open to having to go back to work and that not be the end of the world, that's a toolbox that would be really interesting that someone might not have at 70. But if you're 40, it's like, that's not the end of the world. So that's number one. Yeah. Number two is if you had 1, 2, or 3 years of volatility buffer, this is something that's not correlated to the market. It could be in a life insurance policy. It could be in a high yield savings account. It could be in a home equity. It could be in something that you could be like, hey, if the money that I have in the market dips or there's a crash, I could tap into that. That could be something. Now there's opportunity cost of being 40 and having 3 years not earning, but there could, it depends on question number one, how do you want to go back into the workforce or not?
We just talked about this, Caleb. Like, I'm in my mid-30s. I've seen so many guys and gals accomplish all their financial goals by mid-40s, and then they get super depressed. Yeah. So I'm already preparing for that now and finding ways to keep myself motivated and hungry because I know that you could wake up one day and fall off.
All right, video number 2,
well,
George
let's face
Kamel.
it, I know most of you don't want to wait that long to retire, and I don't blame you. We've got shows to catch up on, malls to walk, kids on our lawn to shake an angry fist at.
And you're not getting your rock back either!
So let's say you want to retire at age 50. Well, let's see what that turns out to be if you invest 15% from 25 to 50. You would still have $1.6 million with 12%.
12%. Interesting.
If you go down 11%, you'd have 1.3. Go down to 10%, and it would come down to 1.16 million. That's still pretty incredible. At 50 years old to have 1.16 million.
There's no why. Why 1.6? What does that matter for? You can't retire on 1.6 million if you're 50. First of all, it'd be very difficult. And second of all, it just paints this like oversimplified picture, like you just said. Oh, you invest what do you say? 15% of your income. Well, first of all, what income? Then you're saying at 12%. Is that 12% every year?
Yeah.
And so and then you get to 50 and you have 1.5 million. You're not retired. You haven't dealt with any of the key retirement risks.
I am okay with content like this, and here's why.
Okay.
Majority of people need some type of hope, and if you look at statistics, you look at where people are at, like they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea is to show them, hey, you could be a millionaire, which I know you and I, when we hear that, we're like, $1 million is not that much money. Right. And I know I sound potentially like that, like that's a really dumb thing to say or not sensitive thing. It is like I want to be like $1 million is amazing, but in the grand scheme of what we're looking at in like over a period of time in the 4% rule, like it's not the end all be all. But here's the reality: is like a lot of people, saving and investing $1 million, that's not even possible. Show them how it's possible. Like that's the first step. I don't know a ton of people that are really like, this is step number one. It's like baby step. It's like, okay, it's possible. So it might get them into being motivated, but then what they should do is probably talk to somebody that can help them with a strategy. That's the devil's advocate, is like, I'm actually okay with people oversimplifying it because majority of people aren't starting anyways. And so we need something to create a hook to be like, okay, this is why you should defer some of your gratification. Looking at this from our point of view, sometimes it can be oversimplified. But I'm just giving the benefit of the doubt to George Kamel and his audience.
And I agree with a lot of things you just said, and I agree people need hope. I mean, look, 50% of America arrives at retirement with less than $25,000.
Yeah. Think about it. Say that stat again. Say the stat.
50% of America arrives to a retirement age of 65 with less than $25,000. So we obviously
sucks,
that's horrible. We're doing a terrible job.
Yeah.
And the other thing is 93% of America makes less than $100,000 a year. So yeah, the thought of saving $1 million is very hopeful. So I agree with you from that perspective. However, where I'm going to push back and disagree with you is if people just understood this process, they would understand that the goal is not to save $1 million. The goal is to have an amazing life. And if you use the principles in books like these, you'll realize you don't need to save $1 million to be able to retire. You need to just remove the key risk and have income.
Next video, how to retire very early and replace your full-time salary.
Never have to work again when you know this. You can live solely off your ETFs when you hit this number. Figure out how much you need to live comfortably each month. So if each month you need about $5,000, that's $60,000 per year. take that number and multiply it by 25. So in this case, $60,000 times 25 equals $1.5 million. The 4% rule has been proven in that you can take out 4% of your investments per year forever. $1.5 million times 4% equals $60,000 that you'll have to be able to spend forever. A broad stock market index like the S&P 500 appreciates at about 10% each year with dividends reinvested. So if you're only taking out 4%, but it's growing 10%, you're not only sustaining your living, but you're also growing that nest egg while you take out that money. In theory, this works even when the stock market drops and goes down, but it's wise to have some money in a high yield savings account for a rainy day.
I agree with the hope angle.
Yep.
I like that he countered with the buffer asset.
Yeah.
At the very end, that was kind of cool. But again, what it comes down to me is being intentional, right? It's like, that sounds really good. And I'm not anti-stock market. I own a lot of stock. I love the stock market. I think it's, for most Americans, it is their opportunity to build wealth.
Yep.
However, what it comes down to is there's something that happens when you retire, Caleb. Your heart enters this tug of war between abundance and scarcity.
But what if you're young? What if you're young? You would say that even if you're young and
if you're young,
yeah.
If you stop working and now you have an asset to live off of,
yeah, you go into scarcity mode.
You can easily go into scarcity mode. It changes all the way you make decisions and how you show up.
Yep.
So if your total income is based off of how the market's doing that day, you're going to make decisions differently.
Yep.
So, my whole theory has been like, look, just cover your income and then be the greatest investor you can be, because then it actually can work. You don't have to take money from your portfolio.
Two thoughts.
Yeah.
Number one, inflation is a thing. He didn't mention that, but
There's no accounting for risk at all in any of these.
Yes.
That's just one of the risks that they're not accounting
Number
for.
two, it's cool that it's like, hey, the goal is not to have to work and we'll be able to have freedom. But there's a part of me that is so sad, because it's like, is that the goal, to have a nest egg and just like coast the rest of your life? Like, there's something really beautiful about creating value. There's something really beautiful about working on things, even if money is not the sole purpose of it. Working on something that like, this work provides value. This message does not inspire me. Someone, let's say, that makes $60,000, $70,000 a year, this person can't, like, there's only so much this person can give. Most of the people in the FIRE movement are not focused on generosity. They're not focused on other people. They're literally, you could say that they're very selfish, because all they're trying to do is figure out a way for them not to work. Now, the devil's advocate to that is some of them are spending a ton of time with their family. Some of them are taking the trips that most people like you and I don't make time for, because we're putting our head down. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from the FIRE movement, but I also think the FIRE movement can learn a lot from the entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe there's a mix, and the market, I would say, I would rather have ETFs. I would rather have $1.5 million in the ETFs, S&P, than $1.5 million in alternatives.
I don't know that I agree with it. There's a lot to learn from the FIRE movement. I think that it depends on the person, right? I believe I'm going to meet my maker one day.
Yep.
And I believe that I'm going to be asked, how well did I take care of others and steward everything I was entrusted with? And for me, that means I got to go all in every moment to try to be there for the people in my life that I could serve. And I have a capacity to do that.
I love it. All right, let's go to the next video is retire in 10 years using the 4% rule. Oh boy, what are we going to learn here?
Here's how you'll retire early. Just multiply your yearly expenses by 25. So here, if your yearly expenses are $20,000, you need $500,000 in order to retire early. If you invest in a solid index fund or ETF that returns 8% each year, this is how much you need to invest each month for those amount of years in order to hit this. For example, if you need $60,000 in retirement and you have 20 years, you're going to need to invest $2,640 to get there.
He's using an 8% annualized.
I like frameworks because I believe they're powerful to help people take action, which is what counts at the end of the day. What I don't like about all these videos is I hate in our industry, there's all these rules. Multiply by 25, the 4% rule, the, rule of, 72, it's like, life isn't about a bunch of rules. Life has to be flexible, and people's lives are different.
This is all predicated on the 4% rule. How confident are you on the 4% rule?
It's not that I think it can work. Obviously, it's possible, But my whole philosophy comes down to not about the 4% rule. It comes down to your return on your result, like we always talk about, right? Like what are you doing with your life, and what's going to bring you to a place of abundance where you're going to be able to spend that dollar confidently and not chint yourself out of all kinds of experiences and show up as a lesser version of yourself because you're constantly living in fear because of some rule.
Everyone is just so comfortable with like assuming that everything is going to just work the same way it did the last 30 years. We have AI.
That's a really good point.
I don't know what the next 40 years are going to look like. And
that's such a valid point.
I would, it's not that I don't believe long term, but could I look you in the eyes and say that, oh, the S&P is going to be the most efficient way to build wealth 30 years from now? I can't say that because I don't know what the future looks like.
No male in my family has lived past 80. Every woman on my wife's side of the family has lived in their 90s or 100s. I'm not leaving my wife and my $2 behind with a 4% rule. I'm leaving behind with guarantees.
Mic drop.
In 1998, there was a study done which is now referred to as the Trinity Study. What they found, on average, is if you were to withdraw 4% of your retirement portfolio over the course of 30 years, you would be totally fine and you would not run out of money. Not only would you be totally fine, but you would actually have 10 times what you started with. So assume you have $1,000. After 30 years at a 3% interest rate, you would have $10,000 in your portfolio. Now assume we withdraw 5% instead of the 4%, we have a 78% chance of never running out of money within that 30-year retirement period. Let's assume you're paying a financial advisor 1%, which is fairly common in the industry. Your likelihood of making it through retirement using a 5% withdrawal rate drops to 69%. So let me leave you with this. This is a really quick way to calculate how much you need in retirement to live for the rest of your life.
25.
Take your annual expenses, let's say $50,000, multiply it by 25, that's the inverse of 4%, and that tells you that you need $1.25 million to retire.
If I hear another 25
yeah,
multiple, I'm going to chuck this thing. Team,
okay,
all
first
right?
of all, you can't use these calculations because you don't know what day you're going to die. It's so ridiculous. Like, you don't have that variable. So you can't just say multiply this by this and this is the number you need to retire.
Yeah.
There is no number you need to retire, first of all. That doesn't exist.
I think the idea of having all your money in one basket is just so risky and dumb.
Yeah.
It's like that's why I appreciated one of the people that talked about high yield savings account. At least like they acknowledged that.
Yeah.
And so continue. But none of these other, they simplify just like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
sorry.
about the study from Towers Watson that proved that people live longer and they're happier in retirement when they have guaranteed lifetime income?
Yeah.
There's a factor there that people miss out on. So again, we've talked about this several times, but what it comes down to is you don't know what day you're going to die. So it's mathematically, Tom Hegna says this in his white paper, it's mathematically impossible to optimize the perfect withdrawal strategy over the indefinite period of a human life from a diversified portfolio. You can't do it because you don't have that end date. This is why, for some people, I'm a fan of paying off your house.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
It makes them more happy.
there's an abundance factor that
Yeah, I wouldn't
unlocks.
disagree
And
with
I've
that.
seen so many people's wealth explode after they pay off their house because they're not in this constant tug of war. What should I do?
I am a fan of that.
I'm surprised you say that.
Yeah.
'cause I've read your book.
No, because if mathematics would disagree with that, but
Right.
we don't. But having kids might not be the most efficient. But I want as many kids as possible. Why? Because there's more to life than money and efficiency. Knowing what I know, the 30-year mortgage is one of the greatest tools in a financial toolbox if you buy right. I would recommend if you don't have conviction on that, pay off your home if that will make you happier, because there's the ROI and happiness is undefeated.
Infinite. Right.
So I don't know if that was a shocker for you, for me.
That was a huge shocker for me. I was surprised from the king of efficiency to hear you say efficiency is not everything.
But I prefaced it by
Yeah.
saying I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But I also wouldn't invest the difference, and because there's a part of me that will sleep better at night.
What's interesting to me is you and I do have stark differences on the home thing, though, because we both of us being in the same industry.
Yeah.
I'm super excited that I'm paying off my home this year. You would be like,
dude.
God, dude, what are you doing? You're freaking. Because I know we've argued about this so many times.
Why are you doing that though?
Because I truly believe that when I buy the company at the end of this year, I'll be able to show up as a much more powerful entrepreneur and go all in. Because I know that home is good. I know that my kids are taken care of, my wife's taken care of.
What interest rate?
I have the first lien HELOC, so I'm at 7.5.
I may pay it off if I was at 7.5 too. But no, okay. So it's at 7%, because a high yield savings account, you're not earning more than 7%, especially long term.
But that's my point is the
but
high
okay,
yield savings
but
account has
hear
nothing
me
to
out.
do with it.
No. Danny. All right, we're done here.
I'm about to be kicked out of the.
Here, hold on. 2 other videos that probably say the same stuff. All
Okay,
right,
yeah,
so
they were all saying things.
Let's talk about home equity. And guys, this might be a second video, so
Let's just make it a second video.
Stay tuned. We're gonna jam. Let's land the plane on retirement, and then let's go into the home equity.
You got to think about your future self. One day, if you're lucky enough to live to be 90 years old, you're going to want predictability. You're going to want security. I've talked to enough 90-year-olds to know. None of them are starting businesses in their 90s. They're all thinking about what they have to give with the time they have left, and they need their money to support them in the safest way possible.
I think that was well said. I like the FIRE movement for the fact that they're getting people to be disciplined. People are caring. It gives you options. What I don't love about the FIRE movement is it sometimes the people that are into the FIRE movement almost hate work. I like the simplification of multiply your income by 25, understanding the 4% rule. I really like the concept of volatility buffer. If you can have 2 to 3 years not correlated to the market, I think there's something there. But I think at the end of the day, create options. What I love is if you can combine the FIRE movement with an entrepreneur value creation movement to say, okay, I'm going to get to the place where my nut is covered.
It's about if you've found your life's mission and you're all in on the FIRE movement, then go for it, because that'll just be an accelerator.
Yep.
If you are one of these people that the FIRE movement's preying on because you're in a job that you hate and you just haven't found the right thing yet, just be patient and find the right thing.
I understand.
So that's where I'm everybody's been in a job they hate, and it's really easy to go, oh man, I would love to play the retirement game. If I have $10,000 a month of passive income, I get to be free. That's fine to have that little bit of pain relief in that moment.
Yep.
But it's find your life's work.
Yep.
And then go on that. If the FIRE movement accelerates that, then I'm for it.
Awesome. Hey, Danny's got a channel. We're using his studio. Go check out his channel, subscribe, give him some love. Obviously, if you're watching this and you want to tune into our next conversation about home equity, paying off your home versus not, we'll talk about that. That's going to be super fascinating. So please subscribe. Please share your biggest thoughts. If you have videos that you want us to react to, please let us know. As you can probably tell, we're taking our content to the next level, and we couldn't do it without you. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And please, if you love what we're doing at BetterWealth and you love these conversations and you like even learning about insurance and all, we have an event coming up June 16th through the 18th. You're watching this in 2025. If you're watching this after that date, just know that we have amazing events. We want you there. But if you're watching this before, we would love for you to come to Nashville, Tennessee. It's going to be the best event ever. And that's a promise that I have. We will make it an amazing event where you can connect with incredible people, hear different strategies, and just be immersed in this type of thinking. And so whether you're in the industry or not, go to lifeinsurancesummit.com. Check it out, and it would be an honor to meet you in person for the first time if this is the first time we're meeting. And so with that, Danny, thank you, and let's just roll into part 2.
Let's do it.